What are we doing? There we go. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. It's Thursday night. The ads are off. Yes, it is last day of April 2026. Time flies. Yeah, it really flies. I realized last night that in 3 days, on May 3rd, it'll be a year since Bean went away, and that's practically impossible to believe, but there it is. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to kind of jump into it tonight here. I don't want to make it like a super brief show. I would like to get all the questions, but the I've got to pick up something at Best Buy for tomorrow morning, and they close at 9, so I need to get over there before we go. Yeah, I miss that guy a lot. He was a good cat. And the sort of readjustment, the schedule thing that we talked about on the Monday night show was great. Hello, Utah. Hello, everybody. This particular week was a little tough because the Right Angles had a technical problem with Scott had some focus problems and sound problems, so they didn't edit together as fast as I would like. But 3 of the 4 are up now at BillWhittle.com, and the next one drops tomorrow, and I've still got one that's just about ready to go, and it's great. I really like this idea. The plan is to do. I think the plan will be we record these on Tuesdays, so after we record, we're done about 5 o'clock, I guess 4:35. I'll do the members only show, put that up. That'll go up Wednesday morning. And then on Wednesday, I will do all 3 of the Right Angles, post them onto the website simultaneously, but they'll be spaced every other day. So, there we go. Yeah, it only affected the backstage show because I could check aboard the other ones. So that's where we go. Kirk says, are we back on a regular schedule? Doing my best. What we talked about on Monday was that there's an awful lot of repetition, and I haven't been able to. It's just so many things to do that I end up doing, 70% of all of them. So yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to basically deschedule the Stratosphere Studio. So that's not going to be on Monday nights anymore regularly. I'll do an announcement on Stratosphere Lounge and on the Facebook page, and I'll put up a post at billwhittle.com when I've got something to show. So Stratosphere Studio will be when there's something new to see instead of just talking about new things to see. I thought that was a really great idea. And I do really like the idea of getting all the right angles done by Wednesday, because that means I can dedicate Thursday to some of these other things and have Colony's time undisturbed and not, feeling guilty or like I got 4 other things to do that day. So we'll see. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to just kind of jump into the questions here, I think, and then we will see what people have to say. Hi, everybody. TSL questions for 4/30/26, curated by Ian Nolan. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate it very much. Hi, Damien. Hi, everybody. So let's see what we got here today. That's pretty good, I think. Great. All right, so we got, let's see. We got an Ian Nolan. We got an Astrasia, capital G Geek, Road Rider, Crikey, Bob Neef, sorry, Guy Balo, Marusha Dark, Braden Higby, Eric Blake, 2 Eric Blakes are going to do one of them. I'm just not going to do doubles anymore. Just as a general rule, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I think I'll take the second one on that. All right, so here we go. Ian Nolan, let me preface this by saying I appreciate that you usually adhere to the 11th commandment pretty well. Given your libertarian meanings on much of domestic policy, I was a bit surprised a week ago to hear you say you had Mark Levin and Dan Bongino at the top of your ride or die list. I hate the infighting on the right, and I don't mean to further inflame this post, but I feel like those two are very much instigators in all of that. Just this week, Mark Levin called for kicking Nazis off Twitter after famously spending the past few months calling many non-interventionist libertarians Nazis for wanting the U.S. not to be involved in the Iran war, and even calling Joe Rogan part of the woke Reich. Dan Bongino spent the past few months since his resignation similarly railing against people, again, who tend to be the libertarians, Doge types, who think he really didn't accomplish any swamp draining or Epstein arrests. For what it's worth, I strongly feel that the way out of the current division is not the Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin approach of insisting that everyone must denounce and ban gatekeep, but instead embracing free speech and free marketplace of ideas like true conservatives, classical liberals should always do. Take Tucker Carlson as an individual when he's not being slandered by Media Matters style clips, which is what most of the right is falling for, along with a coordinated effort to lump him in with Candace, whom he never mentions. He can pull off fascinating interviews of blacklisted U.S. bioweapons researchers, incredibly informative. But if the topic is Israel, he does show some personal biases, just not as much as portrayed in the clips. I come in expecting each bit of content to be slanted by the presenter's personal biases. Everything always is. Likewise, Megyn Kelly has remained completely moderate and rational, and yet some people are trying to gatekeep her out of the movement for not wanting to issue denouncements, but people are now saying she's part of the same group as Candace. Sorry for the long post, but I guess what I'm asking is, shouldn't we gatekeep against the gatekeeping? That people rise or fall on their own, disagree or agree with positions. Someone having a different opinion on a topic doesn't mean the entire person must be refuted and blacklisted. My first response to this, Ian, would be I don't know what saying I had respect for Dan Bongino or Mark Levin really has to do with any of real gatekeeping. I think. I don't watch any of them. Any of them. I don't watch Jeremy. I don't watch any of them. My respect for Dan Bongino goes back a long way, and same with Mark Levin. I'm not aware of what position they've taken on this latest rounds of the circular firing squad, but I just mentioned them because they were people that I thought had been consistent throughout their careers, and consistency is really, I think, mostly all I'm asking for. As far as Tucker goes, I don't think that Tucker has been. I don't think my change of opinion of Tucker is a result of Media Matters clip selection. I think he said verbatim a lot of things that I just think are just a little nuts, and I don't think it's much debatable that he seems to be more on the side of Islam than he is on Israel anyway. When Tucker Carlson starts talking about moon landing denial or the atomic bomb being a war crime, especially the last one, I find that to be I find it to be very poorly informed. I find it to be an emotional argument that has no basis for it, and I find it to be profoundly anti-American. Yeah, Lady Janie says, why don't you watch Jeremy? He married you in that room you're in right now, didn't he? Yes, he married me to someone else. But yes, he did. I don't have the time or the inclination to generally watch any of these guys, to be honest with you. I don't want to have. I want my input to be primary sources, and I've always been very careful about not. Not wanting to subconsciously, plagiarize anybody's work or ideas. I just, I'm really just so out of time. I really generally don't have time to watch or listen to any of, or really the inclination. I think that the reason I put Levin and Bongino on that list is because, like I said, I respect them. I don't think Ben has handled this entire thing particularly well. Victor Davis Hanson, Kirk's Bamboo Bazooka mentions, he's my all-time champion. I don't know why I didn't mention him before. He's to me, he's the man. He's the GOAT. The thing I like about Hanson is that with Hanson I get something new. And what I get from Hanson that's new is the perspective of something very old. Hanson has he's got a long lens, and I get a lot of perspective. And to be honest with you, I get an awful lot of strength from Victor Davis Hanson. If Victor Davis Hanson says something that I agree with, then I usually have a good feeling that I'm probably on the right side of this. I don't know. Lady Janie says, can somebody tell me what situation Bill thinks Ben has not handled particularly well? Well, I can tell you. I think that Ben just like Ben going on Piers Morgan a couple days after the Candace things happened, and I just think he's very combative, and I understand that that's that's what we want in a social fighter and all of that, but things like calling out Megyn Kelly on stage. I heard Megyn's response to this, and obviously there's a lot of Megyn stuff that's been nuts, but Megyn Kelly said that that they had been close friends for a long time, and that when this thing started to really break, they both agreed that they would stay friends and respect each other. Megyn says that his attack on her, where was that at? I honestly don't remember. Was it either at a TPUSA event or it was something. And I just thought that was, just uncalled for. I think the whole thing is uncalled for. Government says Megan needed to be called out. Okay, everybody needs to be called out by everybody and thrashed until there's nothing left. But this, I'm not a part of this tornado of crapulence, and I don't understand it. I actually do understand it. A lot of it is ego. I would say the only person that I would how am I want to put this? I think the only people that I could denounce if I was asked to denounce, and I certainly didn't plant this question, if I had to say the only person who genuinely needs to be denounced, I would say that it'd be Candace Owens and probably Nick Fuentes. I don't have a dog in this fight, but I think those two are. I don't want to be associated with the same political party as those two. As far as the rest of it goes, there's some people who are on the edge, who have said things that I completely disagree with. But you know what? That we're allowed to disagree, and I think that disagreement and discussion is great. I don't know why it has to be so personal, and I think the ego is a lot of it. It's clear that all of this happened when Charlie was assassinated. So the question you have to ask yourself is, clearly, Charlie's assassination was the breaking of a dam, but what put that water pressure behind it? What caused the water pressure on that dam, so that once it got a crack, it failed? A lot of it is, well, first of all, TPUSA is Rich Carrion. I hate to put it that way, but that's what it is. TPUSA, pardon the political analogy, is like an animal, any kind of animal stumbling upon a dead elephant. There's a lot of food there. There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of influence there. There's an awful lot of political power there. I don't think most people realize just exactly how politically influential Charlie was directly with the president, not just in terms of having this organization that did a lot to get him elected. I just don't think people realize that. And I think that certainly in the case of Candace, possibly in the case of Tucker, I'm not 100% sure, but that was just a big hunk of money and influence that was sitting on the table. And what I think happened after that, frankly, was I think it was all just egos. I think when somebody got called out by name, then they just took it personally, and the next thing you know, it's this person versus this person, and it's this person versus that person. It's Tim Pool and Steve, oh, come on. I want to say Crowder. I almost said Colbert. And it's like, is this necessary? Can this not be a discussion that either happens in public respectfully, or can it, or can we all just get into a room and get our temper tantrums? But I really think ego drives almost all of it, and I don't understand it. Not that I don't. It's not that I didn't understand it. I understand. Well, I'm obviously contradicting myself. Let me rephrase the entire thing. I completely understand it. I just don't understand it among adults. And I used to be a me monster, a terrible, horrible me monster, and it was nothing but ego for me. And I had that beaten out of me over the course of many years by really bad decisions made in heat of either passion or ego, or I deserve this and this isn't fair, and and all of that, and also just plain losing nearly losing a bunch of really good friends. When I was really in the real depths of self-importance, my friend Steve was on the show a while ago. I just nearly made him. I nearly made myself unbearable to my best friend. So I understand it. I just thought that most people would have grown out of it, and I would have thought that virtually all of them would have grown out of it before I did, but it turns out that's not necessarily the case. Same thing for hubris. They're related. They're not exactly the same thing, but I got the hubris beaten out of me early because of a catastrophic just a catastrophic collapse of everything that I wanted to do, and just the wreckage followed me around it forever. And so all of that. But it certainly has died down somewhat. But it still continues, and I also think that a lot of it is, like I said, is kind of the ego. When Donald Trump comes out and bashes you by name, which is not smart either. I mean, it's not just the peanut gallery. It's like, Trump is Trump, and you go to war with the Trump that you've got, and I get all of that. But some of this stuff is just pointless, and I expect better out of pretty much all these people, but certainly, I would like better out of the President of the United States, but this is the guy, and this is the only guy who could have gotten elected. That brashness, that combativeness, that just natural reflexive kind of striking back. He's the only guy that could have gotten through the social proof both times he was elected, all three times he was elected. But I would like better. I would like. This is like a perfect description of how I deal with reality. I would much prefer Marco Rubio as president. But Marco Rubio could not have been elected, certainly not in 2016, and I don't think he could have been elected in 2024. I like to think that all of this smashing of Chinaware and all the rest of it will eventually result in a chance to have more decorum. Now, I am not like some people who think that we have to remain polite and play by the Marquis of Queensberry's rules while the left is stabbing us in the guts with hidden shivs. I'm not that guy at all. I think once it's clear that they're fighting dirty, then I have no problem with fighting. I have no problem fighting dirty so long as we don't violate the actual rules like the Constitution. I would never advocate doing anything unconstitutional, but if it was the kind of thing where it was like, well, nice people don't do this, well, we're not dealing with nice people, so it's all about riding this thing. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen to MAGA. It's been really badly damaged by all of this. And let me just put it this way, at least as far as some of these people go, at least the two that I mentioned who I don't want to be associated with in the same political party, it would be difficult to imagine a more effective agent of the left. I'm not saying they are, I'm just saying it'd be difficult to imagine anything more effective than what we've seen these conservatives do. And I think a lot of the 11th Amendment would have been great. Eric over on YouTube says Bongino didn't help any by bailing out. You know, I would like to sit. I don't know him nearly well enough, but I would like to sit down with Dan Bongino by myself, offshore someplace where no one could listen in. And I don't have the security clearance for this, so I'm not pretending or anything. But if I could have, you know, a couple of wishes come true, I would really like to just go someplace way out with Bongino and have him tell me straight up what the real deal is. What's the actual deal with the Epstein files? What's the actual deal with the swamp? What's the actual deal? All of this. Barbara Denby and a number of other people said that Bongino said that his commitment was for a year. Okay. I just remember the early days, you know, when Doge was rolling through these institutions, and you know, we were looking at, thinking we're going to get indictments and all of this. Now, I heard that obviously that James Comey got indicted. He got indicted not for his crimes with Hillary Clinton and the Russiagate thing. He got indicted for the 8647 thing. And let me just say this too, okay? I think of if I could make a list of the people that I would like to see prosecuted, found guilty, and go to jail for the rest of their lives, Hillary Clinton would be number one. She'd be top of the list. And I really do think that James Comey would be second, because not just because of his position of power, but because I'm offended at how effectively he was able to convince people that he's a mature adult capable of running the domestic integrity and security of the United States. For him to do something that childish, and then to say, I didn't know that 86 meant to get rid of something. Well, then why did you put in 8647 instead of 8547 if you didn't know? You know, don't treat us like children. It's like you know, it's like the Michael Jackson interviews where he said he never had any work done on his nose. You know, it's just lying to our face. I didn't know that 86. You know what? Jose says indicted for 8647 is really kind of weak. It is weak. And this is really the thing that's so disappointing. It is weak. I'd rather have him indicted. Well, he's indicted for perjury. It was essentially, you know, a perjury trap. But, you know, given the amount of momentum in the beginning. Remember when Doge was going to cut the federal budget by, you know, a third, and there was talk about us getting, you know, a tax rebate, like a significant one of half of all the money that was saved. You know, what happened to that? And all of these promises that get done, you know, 60% of the way. And you look, obviously, after last Stratosphere Studio show, I realized, you know, I'm as guilty of that as anybody. It doesn't necessarily mean malicious intent. Sometimes it's just really, really hard to get things done. But with all of that said, man, I just think the whole Civil War is petty, and I'm glad that I'm not in the thick of it. And I don't think that Ben is right in the sense that you have an obligation to denounce a friend of yours because you disagree with something, because you know, I just, you must choose a side and you must publicly denounce somebody. It's like, I'm not denouncing a friend of mine, even if I completely disagree with what they say, unless it's something that is so far beyond the pale that it's not a difference of opinion. So anyway, that's that. Okay, moving on. AstraZeneca. See, I can never remember why. I don't know why. Hi, Mr. Bill. Is there a specific reason conservatives, Republicans tend to have poor voter turnout for special elections? I don't know. The largest group of Republicans in the world is the Los Angeles County Republican base. That is the single largest organized group of Republicans in the country and in the world is here in Los Angeles. They don't turn out and vote for anything. I don't know why this is. I suspect it's because conservatives don't like politics, because we got better things to do. This is the heart of the issue. We've been talking about this since I started talking about things. We would like it if politics would just go away. They know that politics is the only way they can get the things that they want. And so we have one group that is motivated 24/7 into political discussion and into political manipulation. The ends justify the means. They have no moral base. They don't care. It all comes down to whether or not they get what they want, which is usually money and sometimes power. And then opposing them, we have people who pretend like it doesn't matter, like I'm above this, like I don't have to deal with this, I don't have to deal with the Hollywood situation. I'm just going to not watch their movies. I'm not going to deal with any of this. And we just retreat, thinking they're not going to follow us, but they do. And it's very frustrating. When you think about the amount of money, I mean, if you go out and try and raise money for a conservative cause, you got a big fight ahead of you. But if you go out and try to raise money for a liberal cause, you will get government money. You'll get tax money. It'll come to you through some kind of, U.S. aid or whatever. But, there's billions of dollars on the table. Billions. It's like Hollywood. It's like watching, Star Trek Leering Academy. $10 million an episode. I'm just using this as a small example. $10 million per episode for that horrendous, horrific, unbelievably bad piece of crap. And take the politics out of it. It looks like when the dust is settled, Mark Zuckerberg will have spent $90 billion on the metaverse. Not 90 million. 90 million is a reasonable investment. $90 billion on the metaverse. That's 10 moon bases. 10. And he did this because he is such a lizard that he knows so little about people and is so dysfunctional as a human being that he really thought that people would like to come home. They genuinely believe. He spent $90,000 million on the idea that the first thing people are going to want to do when they come home from work is to sit in their miserable, crummy little prole apartments, put on these heavy glasses, and then interact with these avatars that look like it was done for Wii on the Wii, back in 2003. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. And when I think about the amount of money that gets spent, we talked about this last time, I think. I know I talked about it on the Backstage show 2 shows ago. The reflecting pool is in bad shape. Needs a lot of work. So Trump goes to the government and says, "How much? Let's fix up the reflecting pool." And the government comes back and says, okay, our estimate is $300 million, and we expect it'll take 3 years. Trump gets on the phone and calls some of his contractors, and they can do it for about $1 million, and they can do it in 3 months. And when you think about that, that's $299 million that went someplace other than doing the job. And all of this money that we pay in taxes, and it just goes to these people. It's just enough to make you just weak, man. It's just horrible. So, I don't know. Astro Say, I think the only answer I can say is that conservatives don't much care for politics. They think politics is dirty and inefficient, and they're right. But unfortunately, we're opposed by people who understand it. If you get to make the laws, you get to take whatever money you want, including $299 million extra for a construction job. So we've got nobody but ourselves to blame. It's just plain myopic. It's nearsighted and it's verging. It's not only verging on, it's crossed into criminal naivete and negligence on our part to not understand what's actually going on and how clear it is, how clear it is. Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. Last week you talked about Muslims and their incompatibility with Western culture. Here are a few words that are important in that context, and all are permitted in the furtherance of Islam. Yeah, I know pretty much all of these words. Taqiyya, which is deceit for the purpose of spreading Islam. Tawriya, deceit by ambiguity, that's doublespeak or exploiting definitions. Maruna, temporary suspension of Sharia so that Muslims may appear moderate. Kitman, which is deceit by omission. Maroon is why the 9/11 hijackers were seen drinking alcohol. Interesting. Asking Grok what they mean and how they apply to spreading Islam is fairly enlightening. There's no question that Islam basically says, do whatever you want to anybody who's a non-Muslim and kill them. And if you you are a Muslim or you become a Muslim and you leave, you've got to die too. I try to be fair about these things and try to compare them, with other religions. There's a lot of in-group sympathy among Jews, very strong. The difference is that with the you put Joshua aside, and that was a minute ago. They're not calling for the beheading and trying to take over the other societies and all the rest of it. Although then there's that entire argument about the financing and all that, which has some merit to it as well, and what I keep coming back to is that I really think that even the most fervent atheists and the most unreligious people in the world do not realize how much of Christianity is baked into everything that we like about life. This idea of an internal censor, an internal judge, means that you can be left alone to do good or evil, and if you do evil and you get caught, you pay the price. But that internal, that sense that virtue lives inside you through Christ, and that you are not just subject to these rules, these external rules. You will do this, you will wash this way, you will face this direction when you pray, you will do this, all of these rules. And Christianity comes along and basically essentially says, look, you don't have to really follow any of these rules. In fact, if you think that just following those rules are going to get you into heaven, you're got the wrong idea. Your heart has to be right. You have to be in a place of virtue, and other people may not know, but I'll know, and you'll know, and God will know, and all of it. People don't realize how you can't have feminism without Christianity. You can't have you can't have any of these things without Christianity. These leftists don't understand that anything that is that unorthodox, that is that unusual, that far outside the norm, is eliminated. It's simply exterminated in societies that are rule-based societies. But when you come along with a religion that basically says that your goodness lives inside you and you have to be your own judge, and we are not going to police you because you're gonna face the ultimate judge at the time, is you can't have freedom without it. And that's the one thing that seems really clear. You cannot have freedom without it. And that's been clear to me from the beginning. You can be as unreligious or as atheistic or as anti-Christian as you want to, but you're only able to be that person because of Christianity. in the same way that the only reason that feminism exists is because men allow feminism to exist. If men didn't allow feminism to exist, there would be no feminism. And the chicks that are with the green hair don't like to hear that, but it's true. And what started out as a perfectly legitimate and perfectly reasonable demand to be paid for the same pay as for doing the same work, and to have access to basically any job that they're capable of doing without lowering the standards, then how did that morph into this thing? It's too much. It's too much. It's too comfortable. This is the rise and fall of civilizations, and the reason that happens is, even though people know that too much comfort is bad for them, there's not a single person on the earth who, well, let me rephrase that. It's very rare to find people who are going to voluntarily live a life of discomfort so that they can be better people. It's a very tough nut to crack. Got him. Coach says, hey, Bill, how do you feel about our USA police officers wearing their religious attire and jewelry and bracelets and decals all over their uniforms and police vehicles on duty on the beat? Well, I have a very clear response to that. An individual police officer is wearing a cross around his neck. That's his business. It's on his body. If they start putting crosses on police cruisers, then I am dead set against that. That's just a clear violation of the First Amendment. I understand that there's no such thing as a wall between church and state. I understand that's not ever been part of the Constitution, but putting a religious symbol on a police car makes a police car is something that must be rendered unto Caesar. The police car is Caesar. Render under God that which is God, and render under Caesar that which is Caesar's, and the police are Caesar. And if you start to bring religious authority into purely state-related matters, then you're going to get real problems. And the wisdom of the founders was that they, like everything else, they understood it. It would be antithetical to religious freedom. Religious freedom, by the way, is really just a largely condensed version of philosophical freedom, which means freedom of thought. And I wouldn't want to get pulled over by a police car that had satanic symbol on it. I wouldn't want to get pulled over by a police car that had a Star of David on it. I wouldn't want to be pulled over by a police car that had a Islamic crescent on it. I think those things are and should be separate in a free society, and they are. If a police officer has a cross tattoo or a Star of David tattoo, that's him and his person. He's entitled to believe that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But you get the idea. Got him. Coach said an El Monte, California police officer was wearing 5 blue and white 10-inch tassels around his waist outside his uniform. They looked like the same tassels you see on a bicycle handlebar handles. Would those be like prayer vests or whatever they're called? Clothing is interchangeable. Look, policemen wear uniforms, and if they are doing something to their uniform that attaches religious significance to their uniform, then I'm against it. And I think I got plenty of reasons to be against it. But the reason I bring it up is because, well, Trinity Waters says Islam is the police in Saudi Arabia, which is why I don't want to live in Saudi Arabia. So anyway, moving on. Road Rider, hey Bill, hey Road Rider. Let's say DOJ Director Todd Blanche actually brings the hammer down and gets real indictments. That'd be a nice change. Comey arrested Wednesday, Minneapolis fraud, California fraud maybe tomorrow. SCOTUS decisions regarding gerrymandering districts in Virginia and Louisiana. A lot of good times might be ahead. The question, this time, what would you suggest we do to prevent the good times create weak men? There's nothing you can do about that. And do failed assassination attempts keep conservatives so frosty or riled up that this time will delay the weak man part of the cycle? I don't think you can, Road Rider, I don't think you can escape that cycle. I think all you can do is minimize it and contain it. It is human nature. It's built into us as anything. It's built into our DNA. People who go through a crisis never forget the crisis. They pass the memories of that crisis on to the first generation. So the first generation after the crisis has an awareness of the crisis and the importance of the crisis, but they don't get to pass the crisis directly onto their kids. And by the time you get to the third generation away, they have no contact whatsoever with the people that lived through the crisis, and so they assume that, that the world is just going to continue on the way it is, and that's the cycle. It's the way it is. It's tragic and it's alarming, but at least, even though it's a wheel, it is a wheel that, generally speaking, is going upwards. I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to say that there's a way out of it, but there isn't. The most you can do, at least from the evidence I've seen in the past and what I'm seeing today, the best you can do is you can try to preserve as much of the remnant as possible. In other words, keep teaching make as many good men as you can during the bad times, so that when that crisis comes, it's relatively short and relatively painless. And the really sad thing about it is I don't know if it's genetic or psychological. It's probably mostly psychological. But I talk sometimes about the idea of staging or rocket stages, because there comes a point on an upward journey where the big engines needed to get you off the ground, and the big fuel tanks just weigh more than you need them anymore. So you just ditch them in the ocean. So what staging is a series of constantly cutting off the dead weight. You drop that big, enormous first stage, and you go to the second stage. And when the second stage is empty, you cut that loose, and you go to a smaller, lighter third stage. And I actually have often thought about what would happen if human societies could stage that way. And I actually think that the discovery and the colonization of the New World is a really great example of human staging, where humans basically, some group of humans said, we're not carrying this enormous heavy weight around anymore. We cannot carry all of the slackers and all of the grifters and all of the malcontents. We got to cut them loose. And when they cut them loose, then off they go. And that's kind of the American story. But you want to just get as many people into that third stage as possible. People who are not only pulling their own weight, but just really ready to contribute. And I kind of think not only the colonies is a version of my best hope, the best outcome, but on some level, it's clear that that you can't bring everybody with you. It's not based on their religion or their skin color or anything else. It's not even based on their natural abilities. It's based on their attitudes. If I was filling an escape ship, I I would value a highly motivated and very hardworking janitor. I'd put their value at 1,000 times that of a academic who is constantly crying and bitching and moaning about everything. I mean, it's just, it's all attitude. Now, really, it's complete attitude. It's like, are you willing to get your hands dirty? Are you ready to work on a team? I was watching part of Apollo 13 last night, and I was struck by just how much of a patriarchy Mission Control was. And I was not only struck by how much of a patriarch it was, I was struck and astonished by how effective it was. Gene Kranz could turn to somebody who's a top quality engineer and say, well, we need another 2 days of battery power. And so, Gene, it's not possible, can't be done, we just don't have it. God damn it, I don't care whether we have it or not. We are going to find a way. Now get out there and find it. And men, especially capable men, we don't go into a corner and cry when we get snapped at like that. That's like, okay, I came in saying it's impossible, we can't do it. He's telling me that's not acceptable, so I'm going to have to go think this again. And that is an unbelievably powerful. In fact, nothing touches it, as long as you've got a good leader and as long as you've got a good crew. When you think of like the Mission Control guys on Apollo 13, all of those guys were experts. There are some villains, minor villains. The flight surgeon is kind of a little fussy, I don't know. And the Grumman guy is kind of like, well, we didn't say that the LEM would do this. This is not our job. But we didn't sign up for this. It's like, okay, even the I didn't want to call them foot draggers. The complainers are kind of within their bounds to complain, but watching how well it functioned, and watching how that authority flowed both ways. I'll give you a great example. There's a scene. It's a small scene where Mission Control has already saved these guys 2 or 3 times over. They shut down the command module, moved everybody to the LEM, and then they had another problem with this, and eventually they had a problem with the carbon dioxide and so on. But there's a scene where that guy John, I forget his last name and I keep forgetting it, where they've got a plan and Kranz is ready to go with it, and he says no. The limiting problem isn't carbon dioxide. It's power. We got to shut that thing down. We got to turn everything off inside the LEM, everything. And there's that moment where Kranz comes to him, because there's lots and lots of downstream consequences of this. And Kranz just looks at him and says, "That's the deal." And the guy says, "I think it was this guy, John. It might have been another guy." He says, "So that's the deal?" And he says, "That's the deal." And that moment where Kranz understands he's got the best people in the world working for him, and if this guy says this is what has to happen, I trust him, and I know his level of expertise. So now I'm going to do something that is not what I would have done before, because if John says that that's the deal, then that's the deal. Dave Big Booty says even Ken Mattingly was made out to have gone on a 2-day bender, was wildly inaccurate. It's a great scene. I've talked about this before. I'll do just a couple of minutes. Was it John? Yeah. I'll do just a couple of minutes on this just because it means a lot to me. In the movie, you've got Gary Sinise playing Mattingly, and during the launch, he's been scrubbed. In the movie, it seems like just a couple hours before the launch. So in the movie, you've got Mattingly drives his Corvette to some clearly secure road. He's watching much closer than everybody else, and there's nobody else there. So clearly, he's an astronaut. He knows the Cape. He's found a place to park his car so he can watch the launch, and he's alone, and you need that because you need to watch Ken Mattingly when the Saturn V has cleared the pad and they've gone and his ride is gone. He no longer is a part of that crew. You've got to be able to see the disappointment on his face. And Gary Sinise does an incredible job of that. But in reality, Ken Mattingly was not off someplace watching launch. Ken Mattingly was in mission control for the launch. Ken Mattingly was in mission control the entire time. They didn't have to go and get him and wake him up and drag him in there. So why did they do it? And well, the reason and by the way, since Mattingly was there in mission control from the beginning, it's not like they brought, like I said, it's not like they brought Mattingly back with just the nick of time to save them. But the reason they did it dramatically was Mattingly becomes the cavalry. Mattingly in the movie has to be out of the picture at first so that he can be brought into the picture. We are losing everything out there. We are going to lose these guys in space, and we're trying all these other things, and there's simply no hope anymore. Wait a minute, what about Ken Mattingly? And Mattingly just rides in on a horse and gets into that LEM and solves the biggest problem that they had. Now, Mattingly did in fact do that, but it's not as dramatic if the cavalry is with the settlers the whole time. What you want is the settlers to circle the wagons, and the Indians just keep on coming, and they're running out of ammunition, and this is it, we're about done. And then over the hill comes the cavalry, or over the hill comes Gandalf with Rohan. Or this is just great storytelling, and so Mattingly is like the missing picture. He's the missing part, and this is what I've referred to as something being super true. It's not true in terms of what actually happened, but it is super true. You could not have had Apollo 13 get back without Ken Mattingly. I just don't believe you could have done it. But the audience doesn't know enough about that to understand that Mattingly has to solve this problem, and in order to make it clear, they had to bring him into a situation that was falling apart. He couldn't have already been part of a situation that was falling apart because all this stuff went on. They were gone for, was it 8 days, 7-8 days? And Mattingly was there the whole time. Mattingly watched from mission control. But there did come a time when they realized that Ken Mattingly knows the command module probably better than any other single command module pilot. Certainly, he knows how to work with this crew because they trained together. So they bring Mattingly back in, and that's the missing ingredient. And that's how it's played. And that's why when everything is over, I'd like to, maybe somebody can look this up for me. In the movie, they say that the blackout period during reentry has never been longer than 3 minutes. That 3 minutes is the longest it had ever been prior to Apollo 13. And then, they're worried about the heat shield being damaged and so on. And this is just great suspense building. This is just great movie making. And I have no problem with it at all. But eventually, in the movie, they get a signal from Apollo 13 after 4 minutes. That's 25% longer than the previous record. And I was just curious to know, number one, did Apollo 13 take longer than other missions? And number two, did it take a full minute longer? I'm just curious about that. Doesn't matter because it's great movie making. It's the same thing. These guys come back from the dead. They are due at 3 minutes, nothing at 3 minutes 15 seconds, nothing at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, nothing at 3 minutes and 45 seconds. And at this point, the wife starts to cry, and everybody's realizing we're not hearing from them because they're all dead, and everybody's looking at their feet. And then, Missile Control, this is Apollo 13. And everybody cheers, and everybody, cries and wow. But it's just great storytelling. And when you see, and by the way, there's a crane shot while we're waiting. This is the whole movie now. The whole movie's coming together here in this. You're in the last 3-4 minutes of the movie, and the entire story now depends on. We've got to know these guys for 2 hours. We like them. We like the mission control guys. Do they live or do they die? While Google says the Apollo 13 reentry blackout lasted approximately 6 minutes. That's interesting. I wonder what the previous record was. Anyway, when the radio signal comes down and you see the parachutes, that happens simultaneously. You get the mission control. This is Apollo 13, and there's the parachutes, and hooray, they're alive. It's the camera's looking down at all of mission control, and it does this beautiful crane down, but the person who it stops on is a big close-up of Gary Sinise, because it's Ken Mattingly that says "Welcome home," and that's just refining the essence of what happened into a great story. That improved the movie. So there you go. Let's see, Crikey. Good day, Bill. Good day, Crikey. Republicans and Democrats are motivated to encourage higher voter turnout. Most people are employed Monday to Friday. Holding elections on a Saturday and or Sunday may be more appealing to the average voter, who I assume have to cut away from work to line up for hours to vote. Weekend elections may also reduce the need and number of mail-in ballots. What's your take on this? I know they do this in Australia. So it turns out that they said, Grok says it was usually 3 to 4 minutes. So Apollo 13 was way over schedule. Well, I'm glad that it's true. Even if it wasn't true, I probably would have written it that way, but it's good to know it's true. So let me just deal with that first. I'm virtually positive from my time in Australia, unless I'm wrong, it said that I believe they vote on a Saturday for exactly that reason. Here's an interesting proposition for you. I wonder if you voted on a Saturday whether attendance would go up or whether it would go down. You think, okay, well, if we vote on a Saturday, then, we don't have to take time off of work. But I kind of think most people kind of like taking time off of work. And I think I don't know if it's passed or not, but there's been legislation that says you should be paid for the time when you go to vote, and I have no problem with that either. I'm just throwing it out there. I really wonder if more people would turn out on a Saturday. I really don't know the answer to that. I genuinely don't. He goes on to say, on a separate topic, aviation emergency landings and close calls, here's a link to an incredible 25-second YouTube short. The pilot does a remarkable job barely making an emergency landing with a dead engine in Sydney, Australia in his light aircraft. If you get around to watching, note the height of the aircraft and the shadow it casts on the trees and rooftops. After watching, I recommend you show the video as much as possible to watch. It's just amazing. I have a feeling I might know what this is. Let me see. Oh, no. Wow. Oh, God. All right. I'm not gonna play this. So this was a guy. He just sent footage of a Cessna that was gliding to a landing, and he was getting lower and lower and lower, and he's following this road, and then all of a sudden the road ends, and you see these buildings coming by, and I think the tail of his airplane missed the lip of that building by 4 or 5 feet. And it turns out, I'll give you the link here. Hang on a sec. It turns out that he was clearing that building, and he ended up landing on a taxiway. Hang on, here it comes. And while I'm very happy that he made it, I think that is a perfect example of the best way to get yourself killed. I mean, I think that's as clear an example as possible of how to get yourself killed. He was stretching that glide, trying to make the airport, and he missed that row of hangars by, it looked like less than a foot. if he'd hit that row of hangars, that would have pitched the nose straight down. He would have gone right into the ground. The people that impress me much more are the ones that make emergency landings in fields or on roads, any of that stuff. That guy very nearly got himself killed for all the reasons that I would advise my students and the people that I have flown with not to do. When I was teaching Natasha how to drive, one of the things I just kept drumming into her head, again and again and again, is, honey, if you find yourself in the wrong lane, or you're not where you want to be, and the temptation to get from here to wherever you want to be, and it's coming, just plain miss the turn, miss the exit. Just your navigator will reconfigure for you. You might add 2 minutes to your total time. This is where people get killed, trying to do desperate things, like you're driving along the freeway, you're not paying attention, you look up, it's like, here comes your exit, you're 3 lanes over, and you just immediately just do a quick look and go. And that's that kind of desperation. There's no go around Lady Hawk. He's out of power. He's in a glider. Yeager says, I lost an engine in a C-172 and I put it down on a road south of San Antonio. Well done, sir. I've had 3 engine failures, and by luck, all of them were within easy gliding range of a airport. They had to pull them off the runway 2 out of those 3 times. But the reason that Sully is a legend and saved the lives of everybody on his plane, Sully, it's really, you can look at, if you want to watch the movie's great. At least the ending, the recreation is great. But if you're interested in these kind of things, if you watch Sully, it's the ending of it is all over the place on YouTube, where they actually show what actually happened. And there is a one instant where Sully saves everybody's lives on that airplane, and it's so crystal clear to me. They're descending, they're over the Hudson, descending. The air traffic controllers are giving him vectors to LaGuardia. He says, you've got Tetersboro at your 2 o'clock, 6 miles, and Sully looks at it for a second, he says, unable. And that was the minute that he saved everybody's life on board that airplane. He probably, he undoubtedly thought, it's possible we could stretch this glide and make the runway, but it's not, I don't need to save the plane. I just need to save the people. I need to save the people. Unable. Say intentions. We're going into the Hudson. He had a plan, and since he had a plan, he was able to fly that jet under full control because he essentially had an endless runway. And once he made the decision to go into the river, he was able to keep enough airspeed on that airplane so that he had full control of the airplane, which means he could absolutely just plain dip the tail in the river, put in as much drag as you can, and then just kind of nose over, and then you really eat the deceleration when the engines go into the water. But the plane didn't break up. I mean, it was perfect. But the second he saved that plane and those passengers was when he was given an opportunity to get to an airport. To get to an airport, that's where pilots prefer to land, and he just said, nope, unable, can't get there. Want to get there, really would be nice if I could get there, but I'm not going to get there, and so we're gonna go where we still control the plane. This clip you just showed me was a pilot making a really bad decision. He should have. The fact that he cleared that thing by a foot is just plain luck. He should have put that airplane down on that road. I'm very happy that he did it, and his piloting skills were good. He didn't stall the plane, but he damn near did. And I would have, if I'd been his flight instructor, I would have asked him, why you didn't put it down on the road. It's that I've seen a number of people die this way. I've not seen them die in front of my eyes, but I've seen people I know die this way because they wished that they had enough energy to get back to where they wanted to go, and wishing doesn't help any. So moving on. Bob Neef, did the Founding Fathers ever consider Islam when they wrote the First Amendment? Yes, they were Barbary pirates, I'm sure, were in full swing at the time, but yes, there was no question they understood Islam. The thing that the Founding Fathers never considered wasn't Islam. They never considered communism or progressivism. They were first wave agrarian men, and the problems of city life and its erosion of virtue were understood by many of them, most notably Thomas Jefferson, who basically said that cities are the source of all evil in the world. But they never. I don't think the founders ever really considered that that the American people would lose so much virtue that they would not only tolerate but celebrate the presence of people using the First Amendment in order to destroy the country. Even if they had been made aware of it, they still would have made, in my opinion, the deal. Because the benefits of free speech outweigh really anything. They certainly knew about Islam, and Islam is not a threat to this country. I'm not worried about Islam. I am not worried about China. I don't have the slightest concerns about either one of them. Not saying they couldn't hurt us. They could. What I am concerned about is manipulation of people's information and social proof in order to get them to hate themselves enough to allow Islam and all these other suicidal death cults to flourish. And the good news is they can. The bad news is they can't accomplish this. The left can. The good news is that that it requires constant effort on their part. That if you ever tell any of the real story of America, if the truth ever gets out, they're done. So they have to be they have to their ideas live in darkness, and the thing about light is even a candle in the center of the Superdome at nighttime is enough to light up the stadium. Maybe not brightly, but you can't project darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. All you can do is take away light to get darkness. And as long as people still speaking the truth, then they can't paper that over. The internet has done us a lot of damage, but the internet has also given us the light of truth in a way that cannot be controlled by the government. Natasha's family in Russia, well, first of all, they bombed, the Ukrainians launched drone attacks against, I forget the name of the town, but it was in the Kuban region, a little north of Sochi, where her mother and her daughter live. And there was some oil leakage into the Black Sea and all the rest of it. And Natasha, I came home last night. Natasha was just really upset because it's fairly close to home. And she was also, oh my gosh, look who's back west of whatever. It looks like our friend is back with a $99 super chat. Hooray! Hooray! Thank you very much, buddy. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. It's very kind of you, and good to see you again, John, if that is in fact John. But thank you. So, and Natasha, worries about things, and she worries about things because she listens to a lot of, YouTube, and so she's saying things like, this region feeds the entire area, and it's like, honey, it wasn't like 20 H bombs went off in this agricultural area. It is a couple of drones. The explosion is big enough if you're underneath it, but you can't even see the damage on a map. And some oil leaked into the Black Sea, yes, and there's tar on the beach in Sochi, and that's true, but that tar and that oil will be broken down because it is fundamentally accessible to organics, and it will recover. And tends to catastrophize these things. But, you know, it's not my daughter or my mom. I had that same problem when she was in Dubai, was just constantly trying to logic her out of this situation, and that's not what she wants. She doesn't want logic. She just wants somebody to hear her talk about the things that worry her and tell her everything's going to be okay. So first I told her everything's going to be okay, and then I told her why it was going to be okay. So it's not, it's not that. Eric says, to be fair, Bill, you watch YouTube body cam videos and similarly generalize from that. No, I don't. I don't generalize on that. When I watch a body cam video, I understand that I understand every time I watch a body cam video that for every one of these insane arrests where people are screeching and running from the law or having complete meltdowns over traffic tickets, I completely understand that for every one of those videos, there's probably 300,000 videos that were put up that could have been put up that day of people who underwent a traffic stop and dealt with it just fine. What I derive from the body cam videos is not a number value; it's a intensity value. I don't pretend that those body cam videos represent the majority of people, but I do say that the worst reactions that I ever saw from people my age are nothing like this in terms of the quality rather than the quantity. So I'm not doing that at all, I don't think. Guy Balo, hello, Bill. Jimmy Kimmel should be fired. Kimmel does have a First Amendment right to say whatever he wants, but he does not have the right to get paid for it. If his employer doesn't approve of his actions, they not only have the right but the obligation to fire him. By allowing Kimmel to stay on the air is sending the message that ABC approves of his behavior. Thoughts? Yes, completely right. Kimmel has the right to say anything short of direct, calls for murder or whatever the case may be. But yes, ABC has every right to fire him, and ABC did fire him. And what ABC found out was that the Hollywood crowd basically said, well, if you fire Kimmel, then you're going to lose all of this talent and all of the rest of the stuff, and you're going to pull all this stuff from ABC. And ABC buckled because ABC doesn't have any morality. ABC is moving in the direction of the least pressure. And when everybody said he should be fired, they fired him. And then when the people who had an actual level of influence over them said he shouldn't be fired, they reinstated him. I thought what he said was irresponsible, and I don't think that, given his numbers, Jimmy Kimmel is the last available host on earth. But look, Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert, aided by the far weaker lights of Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, but Kimmel and Colbert took political commentary and invaded late night TV, which used to be entertainment. Now it's propaganda. And Kimmel should have been fired for that, and so should have Colbert. The Tonight Show was a valuable property, and the Tonight Show, under every host prior to Kimmel and Colbert, were essentially non-political. You could usually tell that they had a bit of a bias, although I honestly couldn't tell you about Carson. I really couldn't tell you about Carson, whether he was a Republican or a Democrat. I really don't know. And that's a sign. And same thing for the same Tonight Show as Jimmy Fallon. Goes to show how little I know about it or how long I've been watching it. But in any event, prior to these guys, it would have been inconceivable. It's inconceivable for Conan or Craig Ferguson to start their evenings off with political monologues, telling people what they should think and how they should vote. you would expect them to be doing monologues that are making fun of the president, no matter who the president is, and that's appropriate and that's healthy. But this this destruction of talk shows into just sheer sheet propaganda is it's the loss of a cultural institution, just like universities. Universities used to be great. Now they're dinosaurs. They're staggering through the woods, gut shot, bleeding out, and they don't even know it. What I'm really trying to say is Kimmel should be fired, but not because of one remark. He should be fired because he's not funny, and he's destroyed a brand. Destroyed a brand. Okay, we got a long Marisha Dark, got a Braden Higby, and we got a real brief Eric Blake. Okay. Marisha Dark, topic, American Caesar, second time asking, I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. What the actual F is going on with the GOP and Congress? They continue to make unforced errors, assuming they aren't deliberate actions, alienating the actual sane and productive people. Most recently, members of the GOP voted in favor of amnesty for 350,000 migrants from Haitian migrants. The ones we were told were eating the dogs. They failed to nuke the filibuster, failed to pass the SAVE Act, an 80-20 issue even among Dems and 90-10 among Republicans, failed to codify Doge cuts, failed to codify Trump's executive orders, shall I go on, failed to declare war on Iran, failed to fund the DHS, failed to audit the Fed, failed to modify, let alone cut welfare spending. I think I covered this earlier. In fact, I know I covered this earlier. Failed to do the most basic things time and time again. Are they actively trying to lose? Because right now they certainly deserve it. Their only saving grace is that the Dems are worse, which is cold comfort when we act just like them. Yeah, spent the first thing on the show talking about how we're getting there, we're getting 50-60%, and that when things were rolling, it looked like we were going to get all of this. Meanwhile, Trump just keeps winning on foreign policy, on cutting DEI, on MAHA, forming the fraud task force, on deporting illegals, and ordering the post office to deal with voter fraud, on deregulation, domestic energy production, on AI and NATO, etc. Most of his actions have nothing to do with Congress, or SCOTUS for that matter, who look like they'll uphold birthright citizenship. If anything, Trump's been doing end runs around both. So unless he actually gets removed from key office by a Democrat Senate or shot, I don't think losing the midterms will affect him or his legacy much. Anybody out there know, this is not my specialty by any means. I know the House is, nobody knows what's going to go for the House, but clearly having the House flip to the Democrats would not be an enormous surprise, let's just put it that way. But does anybody who follows this stuff out there know, is the Senate at risk at all? Because frankly, if the Democrats take the House, they'll impeach him every week. Well, they'll start proceedings, and none of that matters if we still have the Senate. All that said, if Trump keeps winning and the GOP Congress keeps losing at this rate, would it be at all surprising if people actually started begging him to become a dictator to save us from the other corrupt and feckless branches? I know you and I would oppose it on principles, but seeing a growing trend of ultra-radicals with people saying just F principles, just win, noting the consequences of losing being jail or worse. Just look at what happened in Virginia with a fake moderate, for instance. Sage Grouch says without the SAVE Act, everything is at risk. Trinity Waters says the Senate is not at all at risk. Eric says it's not nearly as much at risk. And the Senate needs a supermajority to convict the president. I didn't know that, Roadrunner. So yeah, so there's nothing they can do about that. As I've said before, on January 20th, after my speech, the first thing I would have done in there is I would have dealt with election reform. That would have been my number one priority issue, would have been my number one priority over deportment, would have been my number one priority over corruption and Doge, all of that. My number one priority would have been restoring confidence in the electoral system for practical and moral philosophical reasons. And why this is happening this late, I do not know. But I would have spent all of my political capital on election reform if that's what it took to get it. And I'm mystified about this. As far as the actual so-called Republicans who are, bolting, they're political animals. They became politicians because they want to get into politics. The entire system is fundamentally flawed, including our system, although it certainly wasn't this case in the beginning. Our system is fundamentally flawed because politics attracts people. Let me rephrase that. The people who succeed in politics are, as a general rule, among the worst of us. They're the ones that are greedy for easy money, easy power, and they have no real problem telling anybody what they want to hear so long as they get it. Most of those people go to the Democrats. Some of them are Republicans, and to say that obviously that Republicans are immune to that is just a joke. I'll reiterate that if I was the chairman of the Republican Party, I would make the statement that that the policy of the Republican Party is no re-election to the same office, not 2 terms or 3 terms, 1 term, period. I think if you made that announcement, you would win every single election from that point going forward. But nobody listens to me. TSL is on life support, is it? Check out YouTube and you'll find Kimmel Smokes TSL. Are we talking about the Stratosphere Lounge? Probably something else. Anyway, I would have, this is the problem. This is the problem. They just want to stay there. So. I don't really know if I understand what you're saying there, Paul. If you're saying TSL is on life support, that's hardly news. And we've pretty much been on life support since we started doing it. It's always been a turn on the camera and hope for the best kind of operation, and that's what it is. So, there you go. So Braden Higby, howdy from Idaho. With the new congressional district maps being drawn in Virginia, Louisiana, and potentially Tennessee, it seems inevitable that red states get redder and blue states get bluer. Tennessee recognized June as Nuclear Family Month. They originally scoffed at that a bit, but Nick Freitas made a good point that it's not about the month itself, it's about discouraging economic refugees from blue states from fleeing to your red state and then voting for the same nonsense that made them leave in the first place. One of the cited reasons discouraging a civil war is that Americans are all mixed up politically with blue enclaves in red states and vice versa. If the great sort accelerates and that gradually changes, are we in for trouble? Is there a way to organize the federal government such that hyper-progressive and hyper-conservative states can exist under the same federal government without trying to beat each other to the punch? That's an interesting question. The fundamental problem, the meta problem, is that if we enforced the law or laws, we would be fine. We don't enforce the laws, and the reason we don't enforce the laws is because we don't have a free press. Every single problem this country has comes down to the lack of a free press. It's just that simple. That's the thing that the founders could not have conceived of. The founders could not have conceived that the left, that any enemy of America would be able to own the narrative, own every newspaper in the country ideologically. That they could not have conceived of. And because there's no free press, that means that only Republicans get held up to the spotlight. Democrats not only don't get held up, the press throws shade on them. And so the narrative is controlled, and the fact that it's a 50-50 country, or that we could win a presidential election, just goes to show how bad their ideas are, because the table is so tilted in their favor. So there's that. As far as the rest of it goes, I think we're not only might see, but I think we are likely to see the and I'm using this word with a fair amount of consideration. I think we might very likely see the actual collapse of New York City as a city. I think we might see it actually collapse. When all of the money is leaving, and the crime is shooting up, and all of this stuff is happening, we might just see it simply just evacuate. Anybody who could evacuate will evacuate. And so the reason I bring that up is what would it take to get a progressive to change their mind? And obviously, it's enormous. California liberals don't mind having businesses leaving California. They just don't want to leave California. The policies of the government of California that are destroying the state, they know it's destroying the state. It's not a mystery to them. You don't have to convince them that it's destroying the state. They know they're destroying the state. They don't care. As long as they get their pensions and they get their paybacks and their kickbacks and all the rest of it, then they don't care. And that was the big reveal to me, is that they just don't care. But California is true to form. California is very vaporous. Trying to define California is like nailing smoke to the wall. But New York City, on the other hand, the people who live in New York and who love New York, and I'm talking about like the Seinfeld crowd, right? If that city became unlivable, and people who have always regarded New York as the pinnacle of civilized living in America, if New York becomes unlivable, not just unpleasant but unlivable, will that be enough? I don't know. I think this is a subset of I think this whole question of yours, Braden, is a subset of this. We are heading for a psychological collapse on the scale that we as a species have never seen before. The left is crazy, and they're getting crazier, and reality is not going to change for them. They are going to crash out, and I see no way to avoid it. They cannot win. Lady Janie says, what is unlivable to New Yorkers? Well, they used to live under, threat of being mugged and stuff. But I think what would be unlivable for New Yorkers would be a call to prayer 5 times a day in the streets. I think instead of being mugged for $20, $30 on the subway or whatever, I think if they were assaulted, leaving their skyscrapers, going to their limousines, that kind of thing. And we're seeing signs of all of this. The rhetorical question I'm asking is if you took the most New York-loving, liberal, elitist New Yorkers, and that'd be all the people in all the news networks and all of the guys in the glass towers, if they simply couldn't live there anymore because of the danger to them, if they couldn't go to restaurants, if they couldn't, do any of these things, would that be enough? Would that be enough? It wasn't enough in San Francisco. People loved San Francisco. The people that were San Franciscans loved that city, and that city is gone. Farmers Market, not Farmers Market, Fisherman's Wharf is shut down. Anything that was lovable about San Francisco has been gone for 10 years now. So is that enough to get people to change their politics? Nope. It's not. And there's already plenty of anecdotal evidence that says that the most liberal people alive realize that their policies are forcing them to leave either California or New York, and so they move to Texas or Tennessee, and they vote exactly the same way. And that's a pathology. That's mental illness, and when you combine it with all of this insanity that feminism is causing and all of it, the left is going to crash out. I'm sure everybody's seen the graphs of levels of mental illness among conservatives, moderates, liberals, divided into men and women, and the metric for that particular graph was: have you ever been advised by a medical professional that you might have a psychological issue that needs treatment? That was the question. And the sanest group in the country are conservative men, which come in at about, I want to say, 9 to 10 or 11%, somewhere around there. The craziest group are liberal women, which is in excess of 50%. So that's a significant difference. So in all three cases, the women are showing higher numbers than the men. That could largely be because men don't go to therapy as much, or they just, too ashamed to admit it, or maybe they're just not as nuts. But moderates are more unstable than conservatives, and liberals are much more unstable than moderates. This is a bell curve, and when enough of the bell curve passes a certain point, things happen, and they happen fast. The left is going to. We're already seeing it. Just look at the responses to the assassination attempts on Donald Trump. And just how many of these women are in their car by themselves, screaming at the top of their lungs into their phones because they have no one to talk to. They've got no personal friends. They do it. I used to think they were doing it for clout. I used to think that women were turning TikTok into their diaries for clout, for views and stuff. But I realize it's not that. They're doing it for validation. They're doing it because in TikTok they can say anything they want to say, and there will be thousands, or not tens of thousands, of people who are saying, slay queen, oh, I can't believe that this guy, doesn't want to see me because he said I was too fat. Oh, that man doesn't know what he's missing. You look like a goddess. You're, blah 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 blah. They get the validation. They get it highly pressurized, and so but the world isn't going to change. Their biology isn't going to change. Our philosophy in biology is not going to change. Our giving up our guns isn't going to change. If it was up to them and we didn't have a Second Amendment, we would all be in camps by now. I have no doubt of that whatsoever. And for those people who argue there's no difference between the left and the right, I would simply say we have the means, using force of violence, to essentially do whatever we really want to. And they don't have anything, and it's not even close. It's not even close. We have the actual means to enforce our will at the point of a gun, and we don't do it because we're moral people, and they don't have the ability, but they constantly talk about the desire. So, it is what it is. But we're going to see these. There's going to be we might be seeing the beginnings of it. I suspect it'll probably be another 2-3 years before we really start really snowing. But the victims of this trans fad, and this, I've said this a couple times before, many people don't understand the trans movement. Many conservatives don't understand it. And even a lot of liberals and progressives or moderates don't understand why this is a hill they're going to die on. But the whole trans phenomenon is very, 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 very easy to understand. The trans movement, listen carefully, you might want to write this down. The trans movement exists so that white people can be victims too. It's that simple. When your entire philosophy is predicated on your pecking order, on the victim hierarchy, the trans movement gives white people a chance to be victims too. and at a very high level, I might add. That is the only reason it exists. Um, when when you when you understand that, everything else is very, very clear, and that's why they fight for it so hard, um, and that's why they fight for it for their children, because if you're a white married woman with healthy kids, that's normie heaven. You don't get any victim points for that. That's the system. But if you're a single mom of a trans kid, you're a hero. And if you're a single mom of 3 trans kids, then you're a superhero. Because the amount of virtue that you must possess in order to recognize that 3 of your children by the age of 3 really weren't comfortable being who they were, means that you have now risen to the ranks of, you've been canonized. And so that's what they do. And you see it all the time, man. You see it all the time with these people when they actually get to talking to with their kids in front of camera, and they say, Jimmy decided he wanted to be Jane, when he was 2, right, Jimmy? I mean, right, Jane? And the kid will say, well, Mom, I'm not sure. I kind of wanted to. Well, honey, you would rather wear a dress than go out and be dirty, right? Well, I don't know. You tell me I should, and then then the parents are like shocked. It's like, you ever see that video? It's great. This woman claims that her dog is is vegan, and that she's been feeding the dog nothing but vegetables the whole dog's life. It's a miracle the dog's still alive, and so as a means to show people that this whole thing about dogs being carnivores is just part of the meat industry's propaganda machine, to show them, she has her dog, and then she brings out a plate of dog food, meat, and a plate of vegetables, and she says, watch, and she lets the dog go, and that dog immediately heads for the meat dog food and starts gulping it down, and she starts screaming at the dog, no, Snowy, no, what are you doing? No. I had a friend, they're still friends, they moved to Tennessee like everybody else, but they had an acting studio. I've mentioned this a few times. They were both actors, and they had a store on Ventura Boulevard, an actual storefront on Ventura Boulevard, good location. And what they were doing is they were offering acting classes, which is not a big deal here in Los Angeles, a lot of those, but they were offering acting classes for children, and they had a lot of clients, a lot of customers. And they told me the stories happened to them many times, but basically the story is this woman or man or both would come in with their child, and the child is real mopey, and you can already tell he's just got real problems. And they would sit down for the preliminary interview, and they would say, they would basically say, listen, we'd love to have little Erasmus, learn some of these skills, but we have to tell you, Erasmus is on the spectrum. He's a special child and has special needs and gets upset very easily, and we're just wondering and just concerned that we're not going to put him into too much stress, and my 2 friends would nod and so on and so forth, and then they would start the classes, and the parents would say they're going to stay there for the session, and my friends would say, no, I'm sorry, we don't let any parents stay for the session. Well, we have to stay for the session because Erasmus is on the spectrum. He's a very special child, very very difficult child, and on and on. They say, no, sorry, he'll come back in an hour, and so they leave, mumbling, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for this little kid to go from a mopey, pouty, spoiled little brat to being a perfectly normal, happy kid who's laughing and having fun with everybody else. The second his parents get out of the way, he just becomes a normal kid. And this is what these white liberals will do to gain victimhood status, You got 2 children? Oh, I do too, yeah. How are your kids? Oh, they're fine. Yeah, they're good. They're happy. Yeah, our kids are, they're both trans, and, it's an awful lot of work, and it's just so tiring, and just blah 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 blah. It's all narcissism. It's narcissism, and um, and Jordan Peterson said something like, the chance of you having a trans kid is maybe half of 1% or something. The chance of you having two trans kids is, 1 in 90,000 or whatever the number was. And he said, but the chance that you have an all-devouring narcissistic mother is 100%. And yeah, and the trans numbers are going down sharply now because it's not as cool as it used to be. Younger kids are rebelling against their older brothers and sisters the way they always do, and if their older brother and sister are trans and they got all that attention, then they're not following in the footsteps. It's it's going down fast. The whole thing, I'm telling you, when it's all said and done, I mean this without any sense of hyperbole whatsoever. When it is all said and done, the trans movement will be looked at the same way that we looked at poodle skirts or hula hoops or the Dutch tulip craze. It was a mass hysteria event where everybody was pitching in because they wanted to gain something. They wanted something for themselves. Get in while you can. And what they wanted wasn't money in this case. They wanted virtue points. They wanted a chance to improve their status in a religion that worships the victim. So, yeah, there you go. Charlize Theron has 3 trans kids. Yeah, Charlize Theron is a narcissistic, devourer of her children. She devours her children. She has sacrificed her children on the temple of Moloch in exchange for a chance to feel like she's a good person. Yeah, she's not a good person. But what I'm trying to say is, those chickens have not come home yet. But they will. And we're going to see large numbers, not in terms of statistical sense, but highly vocal numbers of people whose lives have already been ruined because of puberty blockers or surgery or whatever. They're sterile for life. They were forced into this at social media gunpoint, and when they realize what's been done to them, they are going to be very, very unhappy. And we got that to look forward to. One would like to think that that the victims would realize that the people who their whole lives have been told were the evil ones, saying you shouldn't be doing this to children. We like to think that some of those people will come around and realize, turns out those evil, wicked conservatives were right, and my loving liberal parents were in fact monsters who were doing this for their own benefit. That's the truth. We'll see. So, yeah. There's that. All right, one to go. Eric Blake, tonight the case of the swaggering SCOTUS. So, Bill, have you heard the news about the SCOTUS ruling smacking down all the racial gerrymandering? As, thank God, it's come out in time to clean up the state maps in time for the midterm primaries. How hard are you partying over this electoral triumph? It's not electoral triumph, it's a judicial triumph. And I'm partying hard. I watched the results coming in from Virginia, where it won by, 2 or 3 points or something. This redistricting measure, and they completely celebrated it. And I said, okay. But not only, if I understand correctly, does that mean that results of that Virginia referendum are overturned, it also means that, look, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton both said this was a horrible blow against the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Act and so on, and it's Republicans who are doing their very best to make sure that black people don't vote. And all it's doing is it is saying that the gerrymandering that got the Democrats into power in the first place is not constitutional. It's not re-gerrymandering it in our favor. It's just getting rid of these exceptional, illegal, certainly immoral attempts of the left to play by the rules when the rules favor them, and to break them when they don't. And the fact that the Supreme Court did that is one of the it's not certainly not the first time, but one of the first times in my life, having watched a liberal court overturn constitutional laws. It's really, really, really nice to see a conservative court overturning clearly unconstitutional manipulation. If you take away the Democrat Party illegal money, their illegal voting districts, if you take away their illegal allowing to vote of people who have no right to vote, if you take the Democrats cheating away from it, just the cheating, then they never win again, ever. We should be greatly heartened by this. And at the same time, we should be furious because it essentially means it's all self-inflicted. We let them get away with it. We're like people, we're like a bank who takes the cash that we have in the bank every night and leaves it outside the door of the bank with a big sign that says "Do not steal" on it. It's true that, yes, people did come and steal it. It's true that those people broke the law. It's true that those people who stole the money are terrible people. All of that is true, but it's also true that you have made it not only possible, but you're practically begging them to steal. If you leave your sacks of money outside under a big sign that says "Do not steal," then you really are criminally negligent in terms of your understanding of human nature. And that's what we're seeing here, We're seeing suicide. The left suffers from suicidal empathy, and the right suffers from suicidal naivete. We cannot grasp that people could be that evil. And part of that is charming and flattering and noble. It's noble to think that you're not able to conceive of somebody being that vile and just plain evil. But comes a point where you no longer can claim to be virtuous because you didn't realize that somebody could be. It really is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 642,000 times every year, shame on me. It's like, it's not noble and it's not virtue to pretend that everything's okay. It's not virtuous to pretend that either this isn't going on or that we can't do anything about it because we've got to be better than they are. It really is like a bank just coming in. You come in the morning and somebody stole all your money, and you say, "How could they do such a thing? How could they do such a thing?" It's not their money. It doesn't belong to them. I would never steal money like that. And there was a sign there that said, "Don't." I mean, you really just have to ask yourself. We spend so much time asking ourselves what's it going to take for the left to wake up. Better question is, what's it going to take for conservatives to wake up? What's it going to take for conservatives to wake up and realize that these people are going to use every rhetorical trick in the book? So this gerrymandering of districts that has given Democrats political power for 100 years now or whatever is finally being overturned, and the first thing out of their mouths is because the racist Republicans don't want black people to be able to vote. What do we do in response to that? Nothing. Not going to pay any attention to it at all. None. So we've got a couple months really to get before this whole thing happens. Of all of the egregious voting violations, none of them to me hit me the same way as the idea that you can still mail in votes after Election Day. Of all of it, and there's a lot of it there that's just rotten. But the one thing that is the most rotten of all is this idea that, well, we're going to have the election on Tuesday, the 4th, but your votes, you can continue to vote until the 7th, which is their way of saying, if we can win this election fairly, we will. But if we don't have enough votes, then we'll just keep counting votes until we do have enough votes. They cannot survive without cheating. Does that make them morally inferior? Absolutely. Does that mean that they're going to lose? No, because we're afraid to come out and just say what it is. All of these mechanisms that we're in favor of are designed to reduce cheating. What is it about reducing cheating that you find so offensive and indeed fatal to your cause? What is it about reducing cheating that makes you guys go nuclear? Why? Then let them say it's hard for black people to get an ID or hard for black people to take a train. That's when I would uncork the racism on them. Oh, I see. So black people in this country have never had to, forget about buy liquor. Black people in this country have never been on an airplane. Is that what you're saying? You're saying the majority of black voters in America have never been on an airplane? Is that what you think about black people in this country, really? Because you need an ID to get on an airplane. You need an ID to cash a check. You just pound them. And I don't know. I think the only thing about like the whole Groyper crowd is that I will give them is that they certainly the Gen Zers certainly seem to be able to see BS when they see it, because they've been the victim of it. They weren't part of the great experiment. I was part of the great experiment, the post-war experiment that said after the Nazis and everything that everybody can get along equally, and we'll have a United Nations, and the United Nations will make other nations rise to the standards of the United States and Great Britain and all the rest of it, and that people from the third world are just bad luck of being born somewhere else, and if you bring them to a place like America, they'll thrive just like any other group of immigrants to America, and on 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 and on. And this has been the great progressive experiment, and it started with Karl Marx, and it is ending with the adherents of this philosophy genuinely clinically insane. The amount of doublethink it takes to say that you cannot define what a woman is, the amount of mental fortitude it takes to convince yourself that what you're seeing is not true is amazing. It really is. It's really quite astonishing. And there you go. What is a woman? Well, a woman is anybody who feels like a woman. All right. What's a cat? If I asked you to describe a cat, could you do it? Or would you say a cat is any animal that identifies as a cat? Because any idiot can describe a cat or a dog. What's a cat? What's a dog? And if you're going to tell me that the answer is that it's any animal that identifies as a cat or a dog, and if you're saying that everything is based on a personal definition, then you no longer have, forget about a culture, you no longer have a language. Every person is their own universe, where they have their own language, their own adjectives, they have their own nouns, their own verbs, and their own pronouns and their own everything, and it doesn't have to connect to anything else. Everybody is a little island of narcissistic reflection of themselves, and you have nothing. And that's where they are. And that's where they can't walk back out of this. So pin them down on all of this, I'm not a biologist. Yeah. That's when I would have disqualified Jackson. Because if I was on a confirmation committee, if I was a senator and they put Ketanji Brown Jackson up, because I'm a constitutionalist, I would realize it's not my constitutional role to say whether or not I think it's not my constitutional role to say I'm going to vote against her because I don't like her politics. I am here to evaluate her, not her politics, but her competence. But when she said, when she was asked, what is a woman? And she said, I am not a biologist. That is lying. That's perjury. That is perjury. And that's why I would have dismissed her immediately. If she had said, a woman is anybody who identifies as a woman, then I can't disqualify her on that because I disagree with her politics. But when she says, when she ducks the question like that, she's just plain lying. She's just lying. And, you know, just to wrap this up, the problem with DEI, the whole DEI thing was designed to, well, they say it was designed to eliminate prejudice, but all it's done is really massively increased racial prejudice. Because when you are taking people who are not qualified for a job and putting them in a job because of the color of their skin, what you're doing is you're promoting incompetent people above their capability. If you don't like the way that sounds, then you could simply say, if you promoted people whose last names began with a J over everybody else, you would end up with a prejudice against people whose last names began with a J because they were being advanced on the basis that had nothing to do with merit. And so, yeah, once again, everything the left believes in blows up in their face. Everything that they think is good does damage. If we were better at selling our side of the story, this wouldn't even be a discussion. The left, as we know it, would have the same relevance as the Green Party in America. But we don't fight. It's not that we don't fight back, it's just that we're always on defense. We're always negating what they say. We never ever put a better product on the table and tell people why it's a better product. We just tell everybody that their product sucks. Why has this happened? I don't know. I really don't. I do know I need to get to Best Buy in 45 minutes, so I think that'll do it. Yeah, I've actually got some stuff I need to get done before tomorrow, so there's that. So anyway, this idea of doing all the right angles on one day is a real good idea. It didn't happen this week because they were much more time-consuming, but I did get all of them done, and 3 of the 4 are now up at billwhittle.com, and the 4th one will be up tomorrow. We will not see you on Monday. I will be. I'm buying this. I'm buying a SSD, a terabyte disk to transfer some files back and forth with Mike Rocha. But I will be back on Thursday, and we will see you then. So hopefully we'll get this minimum viable product back up to a little better speed after Monday night, which I thought was spot on. And so with some extra time to work, we won't have a Stratosphere Lounge this Monday, but when we do have one next, it'll be something to see. So until then, we'll see you guys next Thursday for the Stratosphere Lounge, and I'll be a busy bee until then. So thanks very much for joining us as usual, and we will see you guys in, I guess, about a week.